Well, I am not entirely surprised. Okay, to be fair, I am. This was supposed to be a sure hit. Why is it always AD carries? So, over the last few weeks, if you have been anywhere around League of Legends, you might have noticed the talks about Smolder. Again. But this time it is for a whole different reason. You see, Smolder already had a bit of a rocky relationship with the League audience. And that's all because of the king of all dread, the Uncanny Volley. That's right, even though most of this is relating to his reveal, which includes his splash art and the tiny cinematic. At first, people did not dig his visual appeal. He did look a bit like a character from Goat Story. And that's because Riot was trying to balance his draconic side with his more human side, because Smolder can speak. Because we have never had a cool looking dragon that could actually speak human. But thankfully, as a result of all the vibrant feedback, with the tweaking of a texture or two, Riot made him look a bit more draconic. And for a while, everyone was happy. At least the people who didn't mind seeing a cute dragon on the battlefield of League of Legends. But then, people started playing Smolder. And a whole new kind of gameplay was unlocked. One that's about sitting back and spitting fire from safe distance. You see, Smolder is already breaking pretty much any expectation from anyone. That goes for both the expectations from the players and even the developers. Typically, all new champions follow a very similar curve when it comes to their play rate, their win rate, and their banning rate. Take, for example, Naafiri, a newish champion, we are all getting old, that had plenty of time to settle down. As always, when a new champion arrives, their pick rate starts higher. The exact percentage doesn't really matter because it scales with the hype and the excitement for that champion. And it correlates to what role they are being played in. Yes, Naafiri was designed as a jungler. And that's not exactly working out, so let's ignore it for now. What's important is that the pick rate starts high and then it slowly goes down as people are done playing with their new toy. The win rate really depends on what kind of a champion it is. The more complex they are, the longer it will take for people to pick them up and finally start winning. But gradually, the win rate should always go up. And of course, every time Riot pushes out some of their adjustments, the win rate will dip down before people pick them up again. And finally, when it comes to the ban rate, it should be self-explanatory. People hate seeing the new champions in every game. Not to mention, people don't know how to play against them until they learn. So it always starts very high and then it slowly goes down. Now, just so you know that I'm not making any random statements, let's bring up the stats of a totally different champion from a totally different role and vibe. Melio. He too started higher with his popularity, he got some adjustments, which is where the second spike comes up, and slowly the pick rate went down. Then, because Melio is a simple champion, the win rate started somewhere in the middle and then very quickly people learned how to play him and it all went up. Of course, then the adjustments came, which is where the second spike came in. And again, people slowly picked it up again. It is always the exact same thing, which also applies to the ban rate. At first, people don't like to see new champions, and for Melio it happened twice, because of the adjustments. But as always, it calmed down. All of these rates generally stay similar no matter what champion we are talking about. No matter who it is, they will always start as being hectic, and over time things average out. And then there is Smolder. You bet, this is where things get funny. First of all, we have his play rate. It started very high, I mean 30% is pretty good for the appeal of a new champion. And over time, nothing changed. Smolder is as popular now as he was on release. That was a month ago. This is already pretty crazy and it proves that either the appeal of Smolder is pretty good or he is just that fun to play. Or it also has to do with the win rate. It started at 49%, which for a new champion as an AD carry is pretty good. And very slowly it went up. Up to the point when people figured out Smolder, and Riot accidentally buffed him, and it jumped all the way to 53%. Now keep in mind that even though this number may not seem to be that ridiculous, we've had champion around 60% in the past. But while this was happening, Smolder's play rate was still really high, so that 3% extra win rate stacks up very quickly. And yes, as I said from the beginning, something sketchy was happening with Smolder, so Riot decided to push out a hotfix. One that was supposed to be a nerf, but it ended up being a buff in the end. So of course later there had to be another hotfix. But you know, what about the ban rate? Normally, as I showed you, the ban rate should start high. But as people figure out the champion, it should very quickly go down. Well, here people figured Smolder out, which is why the ban rate went up. Also, one thing that's funny to point out here, notice how the ban rate at the beginning actually started quite low, because people were excited about the champion and everyone wanted to try him. Again, this is something that is not typical. So at first, nobody banned him. Then people figured out what was really happening with Smolder, and suddenly the ban rate mirrored all the expectations. And right now, we are still dealing with about 60% ban rate, which is where some people might bring up a good point. It has only been a month, so the window to get all of these stats is still pretty low. Is that true? Yes. But actually no. If you look at another champion that was in the exact same boat about 2 years ago, Zeri, you can see that after the first month, her bans started to go down, and then they jumped off of a cliff. I mean, Zeri was still hated because of her high play rate, but all things weren't that bad in the end. When it comes to Smolder, we are yet to see the dip. So now you may be wondering, why is Smolder different? Why do people hate Smolder even more than Zeri out of all champions? Well, there is a lot of different opinions, a lot of spicy ones, and of course, we can find all of them on Reddit. Smolder is becoming the new Zeri. Seriously, this champion is a mistake. I'm tired of seeing him in every game. When Briar and Hui came into the game, it wasn't really bad. But this garbage is in every match, and not only that. He's really broken right now, and his voice is extremely annoying. And it's obvious Riot Balance team can't do anything about the champion, because he's either overpowered or extremely useless, though he didn't even need the buff in 14.5. You see, this post really just summed it all up, which is why it had 2.4k upvotes. Only to get ratioed by a comment that agreed with them even more. I really don't understand. Are you saying that a champion that is mega safe in lane, with good poke, evasion, point and click abilities, doesn't rely on attack speed or crit, scales to oblivion no matter the items, and can build health items because he doesn't care about conventional AD carry stats is a mistake? Jeez man, chill out. This one has 4.3k. And really, this is the biggest issue with Smolder. Riot said many times that when it comes to Smolder, it is gonna be a return to traditional AD carries. This was the main selling point. It was supposed to be a classic. A return to the good old Caitlyn or Ashe. Except, that is exactly what did not happen. And instead, Riot made something a lot closer to something like AP Kog'Maw. A champion that was designed to be AD carry, but is actually a lot closer to the Siege theme. And this core issue was summed up by the next post. Smolder does not auto-attack. It is frustrating, man. His whole kit has nothing about auto-attacks. Instead, it discourages people from auto. For some reason, Q has an on-hit effect, so he doesn't even bother proccing his Triforce or Reaver. All ability-based AD carries have some interactions with auto. Ezreal has passive and they actually do a lot of auto damage. Jhin has 4. Senna weaves auto between Q and W, so she can proc her passive and farm soul, but Smolder has none. Even pros are not autoing. I just watched BDS vs G2 and Han Sama only right-clicked once during his penta. He is a mage at this point. A Lichbane Ahri probably weaves more auto in one teamfight than his entire game. And yep, that is precisely the issue right now. Smolder really did become a mage. Almost like Ezreal, if he wasn't an AD carry. Yeah, he's almost like Xerath with an escape, which is something nobody would like to hear. And I understand that the idea was to give us a classic AD carry like Kog'Maw that can be played as an AD carry, but as an option you can play them as a mage. This was very typical for the traditional AD carries. That's why a lot of them have that weird AP scaling, even though Riot heavily pruned this in the past. But unfortunately for Smolder, it just so happens to be that the mage side is a lot more powerful than his AD carry side. And there is one more post that talks about this side of balance. I believe this was posted before the hotfix, but it talks about how Smolder became the best AD carry in the game with 53.5% win rate. And only recently it was dethroned by Kog'Maw with 54%. You know, another AD carry that can also be a mage. Look, maybe it's a system issue, but we should be thankful it is not Zeri. But the best part about this post are the comments. I just can't take another month of him being in every goddamn game, please Riot. I don't think I've been sick of a new champion this fast. It's not even fun to play him, he's so one-dimensional. I hope he's banned in every game in Pro so Riot takes out the belt. And that is where Smolder currently sits. He is good! Perhaps too good. And people hate him for it. They hate it when they play against Smolder, and they hate it when they play Smolder. And that's on top of a lot of people hating his voice, and the worst of all, his ultimate is a very important ability. So by design, for the sake of audio readability, it has to be loud and in your face.
Mom!
Which does not help his case at all.